One of the best preserved towns in Alabama is Marion. Let's meet Dr. Norman McCrummen, former resident of Marion, as he takes us to visit friends of his, the Averys and the Arbuthnotts. They will share some of Alabama's history as we visit their homes.
I'm sitting with Mary Catherine and Richard Avery, and they live here, and the house was built by their mutual ancestor. Mary Catherine, can you tell us something about the builder and your ancestor?
Well, Norman, this house was built by a mutual ancestor of both me and my husband. His name was Andrew Barry Moore, and he was governor of Alabama right before the Civil War and at the outbreak of the Civil War. Now, he was from Marion. He was a Marion attorney, and he became governor and, of course, lived in Montgomery at that time.
Richard, the house's furnishings are in keeping pretty much with the period, aren't they? Could you tell us what that period is and how you chose some of the furnishings and something about them?
Well, Norman, the exterior architecture of this house is a very typical example of Southern homes that you see all over the South. It dates, like we've said, around 1832. It is a planner's early attempt at the Greek Revival order. But of course, because of the early date, the Greek Revival idea hadn't come into full blossom. So it is influenced by the Federalist style, which is exemplified by the doorway. The side lights and the transom are typical of a Federalist home. It's very balanced and simple on each side of the porches, upstairs and downstairs. The windows are spaced evenly. And then the builder's attempt to bring in the Greek Revival idea is exemplified by the pediment at the top of the second-story porch, and then the two simple square columns on each of the porches.
Now, the rooms in the house are very, very large rooms. Each one has a fireplace, and each one has from 4 to 5 windows.
Mary Catherine and I have tried to furnish the house in keeping with the period in which it was built and in which it was lived by the governor up until 1873 at his death. Of course, the predominant furnishings of the house are the Empire style, which started in the United States right after the turn of the 19th century. Most of the Empire furniture in this house dates from the 1820s to the 1840s. It's typical, and especially in this part of the state, because the transportation problems, it's very unlikely that there would be any 18th century furniture in any house in this part of the country. And then, of course, we've tried to bring the house forward as the governor most likely did. He prospered in his law practice, and then he became circuit judge, and then he became governor. So the Victorian furniture, early Victorian furniture, came into vogue. So, of course, the house is a blend of Empire furnishings and early Victorian, which are very much in keeping.
Now let's take a look at the beautiful gardens of the Moore house as we walk across the street to the house belonging to Mrs. Avery's parents, the Arbuthnotts. Their home, Magnolia Hill, is said to have the largest magnolia tree in Alabama right in its front yard.
We're sitting in the parlor of Magnolia Hill. This house is very different from the house that we have just come from, the Andrew Barry Moore home. This house represents a very posh time in our state's history, whereas the house that we've just visited represented architecturally the early period in our state history. This house, one can see architecturally a very different kind of living Architecturally, it shows us that the people were much more sophisticated, much more wealthy than they were when the Andrew Barry Moore house was built. Mrs. Arbuthnot, who is the mother of Mary Catherine Avery, who, with her husband Richard, we just visited, Mrs. Arbuthnot has lived in this house for quite some time, and we want to talk to her about the house. What can you tell us that is unusual about the house architecturally?
Well, Norman, I think there are many things about this house that are unusual architecturally. The stairway is solid mahogany, the rail, and the spindles, and back of that is, I think, this stained glass window is so pretty. It's the diamond shaped with the different colors in it, and the rooms are so evenly and beautifully proportioned.
The furnishings in this house, too, are very different from the house that we were in this morning. They do truly reflect the different era in our house.
As we study Alabama's history, the one thing that we can always expect is change. The old must, by necessity, give way to the new, and with progress, of course, comes pain. In our next lesson, we're going to be talking about Alabama as she makes progress, but also as she feels growth pains.
Oh, Napoleon, he must have been caught in his napping. He turned around and met his Waterloo. His followers then decides not to lose their royal hides, so they moved on with a and adieu. They had heard about a place in a very new country where they could grow the olive and the vine. To Demopolis then they came, made a town and made a name, tried some farming and got a for even trying. Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, and the olive were disaster. Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, and the olive were disaster. Though the vine and olive colony wasn't in Texas, they got themselves a really bum steer. 'Cause after they'd built their homes, they were in the wrong place. So they moved on with a and here. They rebuilt again where they should have been in the first place. But their hearts were not really in their work. And farming in silks and lace is a hard thing to do. So they moved on with a and a smirk. Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, oh, divine, and the olive were disaster.
Oh, divine,
Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, oh, divine, and the olive were disaster.
Now, if you decide to visit this place in our country, to meet the French, the vine and olive crew, disappointment, oh, you shall know, 'cause they moved on long ago. Yes, they moved on with a and adieu. Oh, divine,
Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, oh, divine, and the olive were disaster.
oh, divine,
Oh, divine,
oh, divine,
oh, divine, oh, divine,
and the olive were disaster.